So welcome everybody. I'm Giles Perkins, Head of Future Mobility for WSP and Programme Director as well for the Adept Live Labs, the £23 million Local Roads Innovation Programme. Our fireside chat today, I've got Jason Pavey sat next to me at the virtual fireplace, Market Director for Local Transport at Atkins, and we have Reading in the room with us today. Simon, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hiya, I'm Simon Beasley. I work for Reading Borough Council. My role at Reading is very much within transport, more on the sort of traffic management, parking management side of transport. But I'm also the local authority lead on smart city initiatives that cover all of Berkshire. So for the purpose of the Live Labs project, I represent all the local authorities of Berkshire.
Splendid. And the Thames Valley, the Reading Live Lab is one of the biggest ones, hugely complex, lots of things going on. Could you try and give us kind of the Janet and John overview of how all these things fit together and what you hope to achieve and what's been delivered and how all the partners work?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because it is a big project, and that in itself has generated some interesting points in running a project such as this. As I've already mentioned, Berkshire is broken up into 6 unitary authorities. So that in itself is quite different. We have a mix of urban and local authorities are represented, if you like, in that way. So, for example, West Berkshire is very rural. As you travel closer towards London, there's very urbanised areas as well. Reading itself sits in the middle of Berkshire, very urban. So the objectives of the scheme, the principles are the same, actually. We're very people focused. We're looking at mobility in its true sense and how people use the highway network, the road network, and the choices that they make when they come to moving around. Clearly, if you're in the rural area, the option to leave the private car at home and jump on the bus or to cycle may be a little bit more limited, depending on how far you have to travel. Whereas in the urban environment, it may be much easier and the facilities are there for you to use. But it's looking at what makes people decide, if you like, and the decision process and the purpose of our project is to incorporate everything. So it's looking at the road network. It's not just looking at those traditional things that we think about, like congestion, the time of day that we travel, the need to get to work because we need to be there by a certain time. We're looking at the road surface as well. We want to bring into people's psyche the impact that they're having through their travel choice and what that means, the carbon footprint, if you like, that they are adding to, or their own carbon footprint and the impact that they're having. So, you know, the choice of the road surface may not necessarily affect people if they're travelling in a car. It certainly doesn't affect anybody if they're travelling on public transport because they're predetermined routes, but it will affect people that choose to travel on a bicycle, for example. So, you know, that's very important. We're also looking at people's health as well. And one of the objectives of our project was to engage with health and looking at people's individual needs. So again, if you suffer from asthma, you know, knowing what the air quality is going to be on any given day will influence the way that you travel, or we're looking at making it influence in the way that you travel. So you might be a keen cyclist, but you may be put off for cycling because you do have an underlying health problem like asthma. And we're trying to make sure that people have the right information that's relevant to them, to their lifestyle, to their needs, you know, at any given time. And I think what's interesting for us, this is an adaptable project, and what's interesting for us with the effect of COVID is that, you know, people's mobility is going to change. We're not all travelling to and from work at the same time like we did before, but we're travelling around, or potentially after COVID, we're going to be travelling around much more throughout the day, and we might be nipping in to do this or to do that. And so, you know, what the impact is on the use of the road surface, people's health needs, air quality, and all those factors become even more important, we think, post-COVID.
Something you talked about quite really around of systems and how all that comes together, and really interesting to see the linkage to public health and examples you gave on air quality, etc. For a layperson looking at the project, what sort of technology or data or energy or sensors, what does that look like in practice on the ground, out of interest?
Yeah, it's a really challenging one, that, because the first part of our project is very data driven. So we're looking at bringing in all those bits of information, if you like, that make people and give people those informed choices. So what does it actually look like? Technology is always quite a difficult one to sell, we feel. One of the main partners within our project is O2, and they are creating what's called an insights platform. And it's the insights platform that will pull all this together and then actually give that public facing sort of engagement tool or platform so people can see and make those informed decisions. So, and I think what's really important from a local authority perspective as well is, technology in transport's been around for a while. And I think that, individual local authorities have had their own agenda in trying to encourage people to modal shift. And I think that this project is quite different in that by engaging with a big organisation like O2, where people are using their services for something that's quite different today, it will come and be delivered to them in a different way, and hopefully in a trusted way, or in a way that is difficult for local government or even national government to reach. So, they have something presented to them in a fashion that is relevant, if you like, relevant to them and relevant to their lifestyle.
And just to follow up on that, and then we'll pass over to Giles at the other side of the fireplace. But just to follow up, I love the fact you're trying to give information to make people make informed choices. In terms of things like modal shift, and the ability perhaps to get people to think in different ways, there's two parts to the question, I guess. What's your thoughts and aspirations in that space, and how important could this be to sort of driving net zero and decarbonising the transport network?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge question and $1 million question in many respects. Modal shift, I think, is always tricky. I mean, I heard someone say the other day that it's taken us 100 years to develop and use the private car in the way that we do today, and we're not going to undo that cultural sort of development, if you like, that we've created over that time in 5 minutes. And I think that's where we need to be careful. We need to be sensible. But I think that the whole climate change agenda clearly is much more relevant to people today. And people do want to know. And I think that, people are much more conscious, but actually getting people to change, particularly when it comes to travel, is always going to be much more challenging. There's lots to be made about the efficiency of vehicles and cleaning up vehicles, and I can see a future, and many will probably agree with me that actually the car's not going to go away. The car's there. But the car will get better. It will get cleaner and greener. There's an element to our project where we do have energy, and we are looking at the connectivity of the electric vehicle to the place of work, to the building, if you like, and looking at the way that we use energy and collect energy within buildings and how that can be transferred to the private car, the electric car, as well. But I think that, all of these projects and the overall adept program of these Live Labs projects, when you have a look across the board, we're all aiming for that same ambition. And it is about finding the right method of then influencing and informing people so that they then have, they then can make that informed choice. So I think if we try and tell people to do something, the British culture is that we don't like that anyway, and we don't like being told. But what we do like is we like the information, we like the data behind us. And if we can do things a little bit easier, if we know that actually the best time to travel is now, or the best mode of transport is this, at this moment in time, then I think people will be, there's the opportunity to influence people, much more than they've been influenced before in their decision making. And I think that, that if you tap in on the work that lots of local authorities are doing anyway as a part of their policies, linking that to those traditional information sources, like where's the nearest place to park. If you do choose to drive, that you can now drive in and you can park in that space. All of those things that we've been doing for a number of years now, they all fall into place as well, and just make it a lot easier for people to make those decisions, as I've said.
If I could kind of an interesting kind of follow-up. Obviously, COVID has changed people's travel habits and perhaps their perceptions and decisions, etc. How is that kind of feeding into what you're doing? Because obviously that's a major disruptor, especially on a behavioural project, which is what's at the heart of this. So kind of any views around that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, this, because initially when we were looking at COVID, we went into our lockdown, and then things started to relax, and we started to come out of lockdown, and you could see that we were very quickly kind of returning to what we had before. So all of those good things that happened, like air pollution was cut and air quality improved. There was obviously less congestion and all those things that happened. More people were taken to cycling and walking and so forth. They actually began to undo really, really quickly as we kind of emerged out of lockdown. But now the situation in the country where the cases are rising, and we seem to be going back into that kind of lockdown mentality where people are thinking about their own health. I think the longer that COVID goes on, the more opportunity there is in getting a lasting behavioural change in people. So I think that the real challenge for the Live Lab project, for not just for us, but for the whole programme, is to really try and tap into that now as it's happening. And I think that timing wise, wow, isn't it amazing? We have a great opportunity. We've got a year left of this project. We're going to be worried about COVID until spring, maybe summer next year at the very least. It could be knocking around that long. So we have these projects that will be then ready to go and ready to offer people different choices, in the hope that they will then stick to those behavioural change issues and habits that they've done during lockdown, because that's what it takes. It takes a major change in your life for you to change a habit. Much is made. When you move home, for example, when you move home, if you know what's around you, and if you're on a bus route, whereas you weren't before, at those big changes in your life, you're more likely to make big changes in habits as well. And that's where I think we have a great opportunity within this programme.
Fantastic. So as a wrap up, really, any advice for local authorities thinking of getting into the innovation game, given where you're on this journey in this big project? Any advice for our colleagues out there?
I mean, from my perspective, we've done quite a lot of innovation in the Reading Berkshire area over a number of years. We were one of the original UTMC demonstrators, for example. So, innovation, pushing the boundaries, being visionary, if you like, in what the world is going to look like in years to come is something that comes sort of second nature to us. And I know that's really hard for a lot of local authorities, where they don't necessarily can see the advantages that are so long ahead, possibly. And I think that COVID will make it challenging as well, when councils are trying to balance the books, if you like, not just with the effect of COVID, but with the effect of 10 years of austerity and all those other challenges that local authorities have. But I think that what I like about the Live Labs programme as a whole programme is that it's got a really good outreach. And I think if we're serious as UK PLC, if you like, that we have to keep the momentum going on this. So I would encourage any local authority to take a long, hard look at what these innovation programs have to offer and see how that fits in with what their longer term ambitions are. And if they have those longer term ambitions, then they've really got to take a, take a chance and have a go at what these innovation programs have to offer.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Simon. Thank you to Simon, to Jason Pavey from Atkins, who's one of our commissioning board members. If you want to find more out about Adept Live Labs, just Google Adept Live Labs. You'll find a website where you'll find our end of year report. You'll find our white papers. You'll find our blogs and news pieces. Lots of information in there. So thank you for listening, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.